Minorcan Navy. I have another interview here today from a rescuer that was involved with the Sapelo Dock Collapse. Uh, Her story is important to hear, and I think it's important for them as a group, those people who were there together, to have a venue to be able to speak and talk about their venue. As bad as it was for the folks who lost loved ones at this event, it was pretty rough for the rescuers, those people who were involved with the aftermath of the event, and things they had to deal with. This is Chris O'Cleary. Listen to what she has to say here. Thank you for watching. Well, hey, Minorcan Navy. I'm here today with Chris O'Cleary, and she was also there the day that the gangway collapsed on Sapelo Island on the ferry. She has a very interesting story from her perspective and really what she did in the event. So, Chris, hello, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining us. Can you kind of take us back a little bit to the right before the incident? I understand you guys were getting ready to take a camping trip on Sapelo.
Yeah, there were 9 of us going camping for 4 nights. And like Bob had said, came over on the 245 ferry. And what is typical is they have the campers get off, unload their, allow the oncoming passengers to board, and then allow to take our gear off the dock because it, would interfere with the onboarding process. So the DNR ferry crew member instructed us to put our gear, what ended up being on what's the north side of the dock, kind of where the outgoing current was hitting. So we unloaded all of our, and we were standing there. And then suddenly I heard this really loud snapping sound, coupled with a drop in the dock itself. And of course we were all alarmed, and I happened to be right next to it, and there's the cement pillar. And so I leaned out over the cement pillar to look down at what may have broken. And I could see that, I'm not even sure the correct term, but maybe it's guide bracket. It allows, I guess, the float dock to fluctuate, with tide and waves and stuff. And I could see it was broken because there was another one right beside it. And I called out to the DNR official across the way, and I said, it's like, hey, dude, this bracket here is broken right here. And I'm looking down at it, and he goes, yeah, we know it's been broken like that for a while. And I was like, okay, well, I guess they're aware of it. I guess it's not an issue. I mean, so we just kind of took him at his word. And then I happened to go on to the other side of the dock, which was less crowded. It didn't have our stuff, didn't have us. I like to bird watch, so I was out looking for birds, maybe porpoise, and standing there enjoying the beautiful scenery. And then they started boarding the new passengers. Well, the new passengers were the festival goers, who were all exquisitely dressed. Like, hair was beautiful, and I was just standing there really admiring and commenting on the beautiful people that were, coming across the gangway. And given their population, they were moving slowly. A lady had a walker, had gotten on. So maybe initially they were spread out coming across the gangway, but it had slowed significantly on the transition of kind of stepping, onto the dock itself. And so backed up fairly significantly.
So what's interesting really to me is right there somebody said, yeah, there's a problem there, we know about
it. Exactly. I thought the same thing. This is one of the things that has disturbed me significantly since this event. So sitting on that side, I'm watching the people cross, and honestly, I wasn't really looking at like the span of a gangway. I've never really noticed an 80-foot by 8 gangway, which seems really long to me. with no support system, in the middle or anything. So, and then, maybe 25 people had crossed onto the dock and started loading the ferry when it just buckled in the middle. And it seemed almost like slow motion. And because it buckled in the middle, and when it hit the water, I think the well slowed the progression of the buckle. And I was thinking, oh, wow, this is terrible. We're going to have to help these people off the gangway, never anticipating that it would actually break away from one of the two connection points. And, within 10 seconds, it broke away. Oh, gosh, it's going to be hard to retell this, I guess. It broke away from where we were standing. And in within a minute or two, so as soon as it buckled, we all started trying to get life jackets, which that process was taking longer than anticipated. It didn't seem like maybe they didn't recognize that it had buckled or that it had collapsed, but there weren't people hastily getting any life-saving equipment. So we started getting life jackets, and as soon as I came back to start throwing the life jackets out into the water, a person came floating up to the surface face down and not moving. And the crisis I was just like, I cannot believe that I'm just going to stand here and watch people die in front of me. It was so mind blowing. I threw the ring out, and at that point we had more life jackets, and we were throwing them out in the water. And because the current was so strong, people were drifting away. They were they weren't able, for whatever reason, to get themselves to the life jackets. Several were injured on the fall. Many don't know how to swim. The life jackets weren't, in the water near them. So I just decided, I was like, I can get them their life jackets. If I swim out there, I'm going to grab life jackets and I'll just swim them to the people. So I took my hat off and my glasses, and I dove in, and I got myself a life jacket and put it around my arm and grabbed another one and swam it to this gentleman. And I pulled him up, and I quickly realized, I was like, he's not going to be able to get himself to shore. He was in a complete state of shock. And so I just got him to tuck it around his chest, and I grabbed his shirt, and I just started swimming to the shore. I've been around water my whole life. I grew up in South Florida. I live on a river. I'm in the water all the time, so I'm very comfortable in the water. I know they've always said, you don't want to try to save a drowning person. But these people were so passive in the water. I'd never felt endangered whatsoever. He allowed me just to assist him to the shore. So I got him to the shore, which took a minute, and I'm screaming at the people on the shore because I can't get him up by myself. He was a large guy. And a couple people came down and grabbed him, and then I realized these people they're just continuing to float away. So I swim out, and I see a person face down in the water, and I'm thinking to myself, well, they haven't been in the water that long. Maybe we can save this person. So I grabbed him by the bottom of the pant leg, and I swam that person to the shore, and I screamed at the people on the shore to help me with this next one. On my swim back with that gentleman, I noticed the guy who was doing this kind of light backstroke and just barely had his head above water. But I think he was going exactly parallel to the shore, which when I thought about it made sense because the current pushing against his back helped him to stay somewhat upright and keep his mouth above water. And so while I was pulling this guy, I was like, if you just turn a little bit and follow me, we can make it to the shore. Just come this way. So while I was pulling this guy, I was helping this other guy who was swimming to get to the shore. Then I'm just looking at these people floating away, and I can see the ones that are still upright and the ones who are not. So I ran down the shore, and I swam out and made it to an older lady And I told her, I was like, I got you. We're going to get to shore. And I ended up pulling her to shore. Of course, I was completely exhausted, but I was telling myself the whole time that I can do it. I'm a relatively fit person, thank goodness. I'm a pretty good swimmer. And so I saw one more person with their head up, but they were kind of down near the boat that had been released from the dock, which ended up being Bill, one of my campers, which I didn't realize. And I believe his name is Grosvenor. So I ran down there and swam out, and it was a mom and a young child that she had in front of her, and they were floating upright. And so I swam out to them, and the boat was kind of coming at us, and I was yelling at the guys on the boat who were trying to get a deceased person up into their boat. And so I got her, I would say, halfway, most of the way to the shore. And then I yelled at Bill, and he was like, "Do you need me to help?" And I was like, "Yes." Because at that point I had probably been in the water 20 or 25 minutes and, running and working. And it was just extremely exhausting. And if I could have help myself, because I had saw a spot down current that I told myself I'm not going to go out past that, because I knew that if I got much further from shore, I was going to risk my own life because of my fatigue level.
Sure.
But thank goodness we got her to shore. She seemed to be pretty good given the conditions. I was overwhelmed. So I started going back up towards the parking lot when I noticed this gentleman who was kind of rushing down the shore, and he was yelling at the woman that we had just gotten up, and they were calling out to each other, "Do you have so-and-so? Do you have so-and-so?" And so I heard their exchange about he had one child and she had the other, and they realized that their family was intact, and they literally fell onto the oyster shells and were praising Jesus and just thank God and just crying. And it was just it happened so fast, and it was so overwhelming. I didn't see anybody else in the water with their heads up. So I was I needed just to go. So I went up and found myself a spot in the sun and lay down and cried for about 30 minutes.
Wow. That is a very powerful story, and it's obvious to me that your actions that day, there are people alive today because of the efforts that you made to get the people. And I'm seeing video of the current that day, because someone had posted video of the current there, and it was really moving. And it's of course, you and I can understand. You've been in the water here. You understand our currents and our lunar stages and how that affects our currents. And for the layperson that might not be familiar with currents, they don't understand what a 4-knot current can do to the body from an exertion standpoint of trying to just hold your headway in that current. I mean, you get out and you try to swim 4 knots for any length of time just to hold your position in the current, and you quickly would realize it is an extreme challenge to do. And for you to get out and be able to do what you did is an amazing story.
Well, I was aware of what the tides would be, and I knew that the night before was the full moon, and they were having a king tide. There were actually flood warnings up and down the coast that day, not in Georgia, but in North Florida. And so I was aware of that. I knew we had strong nor'easter winds because I kind of pay attention to that sort of thing. Like I said, I grew up around the water. I've been on boats, my whole life. And I live on a river that has a, relatively decent current, which I swim in on a regular basis. I paddleboard, I surf. So I could feel comfortable in moving water. And I guess that's not the case for all people. And I also felt comfortable with every person I got to. because they weren't grabbing onto me. They weren't trying to use me as like a life-saving, device. They literally allowed me to help them. I never felt endangered, which, looking back on it now, is surprising, but the way in which they were kind of welcoming help, when it did arrive. So, I know it, those conditions for most people seem, really hard, and I guess they were, but I was comfortable.
Well, it's certainly been an honor to have you on the channel today, and to be able to listen to the story as things unfolded there. Again, I want to say, and I'm sure most everyone that's going to see this video is going to say thank you for your efforts that day. The day, as tragic as it was, could have been so much worse if it wasn't for you and the others who stepped up and said, I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to get involved. And I thought that is an incredible part of this story.
Well, the event pulled me in. I mean, there was nothing else to do but to help the people that were essentially helpless. I mean, in retrospect, when I came up to the parking lot, and, it seemed to take a very long time to see any emergency. There was not an ambulance on site. Even when I got that last person out of the water, I didn't see any kind of emergency, boat in the area. And since the incident, of course, it's been sitting with me very heavily since it happened. I just wish that, maybe there was more preparations, given the fact that it was Cultural Day and they were anticipating a lot more people on the island that day. And a lot of the people who go to that are elderly. I just wish the preparations for that event could have helped in a crisis that happened like this. And
yeah, let's hope that we never have to see another event like this happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And before we go, I would like to, can I say something about, they're trying to raise some funds for families and, victims of this terrible tragedy. And they can go to the Alan Bailey Foundation.org, and I can text you that.
We'll put that. I know Alan, and get that link up here on this video.
Okay.
And I know Alan's very active in the Sapelo community, having family there, live there. He's a matter of fact, I spent a little bit of time talking with him when I was in Meridian at the time. So yeah, we'll certainly do that. Chris, again, thank you so much for
I'd
being
like
here.
to say one more thing before we go, if you don't mind. Sure. We stayed on the island for 4 days, and we had a chance to talk to some Geechee people. And I guess the message they wanted to have out there is that they want people to feel safe to return to Sapelo. I mean, Sapelo is a beautiful island with gorgeous people. I'm sure getting to and from with the ferry will be safe in the future. It's well worth the visit, and I plan to return.
That is awesome, and I share your sentiments. Go to Sapelo, experience Sapelo. It is a very special place. One of the more special places we have here in along the Georgia coast, for sure. Maybe in this whole country. Chris, thank you again so much for being a part of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's one of the richest places of history. Yes, my pleasure. Thank you, Andy, for your work. I really appreciate it.
You guys take care and be safe out there.